Right, well, welcome to today's webinar on the topic of personnel. Hopefully you can all see my screen. So we'll just make a start for today. Could just please make sure your microphones are muted, your video feeds are turned off as well to save on bandwidth, and also please use the chat function to ask any questions. My colleague Pat will keep an eye on this and let me know if there's anything we need to cover. So the aim of today's session is to go through the various functionalities relating to personnel management and employee details within Aerotrac. And we're going to cover some particular topics such as the personnel setup screen, the work profile screen, the employee details, the timesheets within the main application, and also a separate application we have called Time Clock to help data entry. So what we'll do is we'll click straight into the live demo. So hopefully you can all see my screen and we should have the main Aerotrac application up and running. So what we're going to do first is go into the administrator module. And under administrative setup, we've got a personnel block here and personnel setup. And this gives us all the main details for setting up anything to do with personnel and employees. So this first tab we've got is for the departments. So this is for every department within your organization, and it allows you to set up the name, give it a code, and the important things of what it costs you as well, and what your recovery rates are for that department as well. You can also apply your recovery overheads to a specific ledger code, and you can also apply a specific analysis code for these departments. If you do have additional modules like the quality module, you can even set these up as requiring audit, and they will show up on your audit plan as well. At the bottom half of the screen as well, we've also got this applicable work groups. So this will identify which work groups that particular department is related to. And we'll go on to work groups across the next tab. So employee work groups. So we've got things like administration, apprentices, we've got our licensed engineers, people involved with manufacturing, your supervisors. So if you've got any lead hands or sort of managers, things like that, you can set up these work groups and then they will relate back to the departments as well. You can see on the bottom right side, you can see how many departments that particular work group has been assigned to. Move across to the next non-productive tab. So this is a way of setting up any work which obviously isn't billable, things like your annual leave, if an employee's on or off shift, if they're taking a break, if they're doing things like training, anything that you don't sort of want to cost back to a customer, but still to capture their hours within the organization. If they're on an 8-hour shift, but there's an hour of non-productive work, say they're doing some training, specific training, they can assign that here, and you can also then assign the specific ledger code and analysis code. So again, that kind of all captures that information for the hours employees are working. You can see that there's also these classifications on the right hand side. So if it's an absence code, so like your annual leave is sort of more of an absence and it's a holiday as well. But obviously the sick codes, it's an absence. So again, it's saying they're away, but it's to do with a sickness rather than an actual holiday as well. We've also got something here for forced off shift. So this is particularly when using our time clock system. It will automatically clock someone off should they get to the end of their shift and they haven't booked off their clocked off. So the system will automatically clock them off and stop allocating any time, so you don't get any additional time booked to a job that shouldn't be there as well. You can see as well, this is what's called a DCS sheet. So DCS is data collecting system. So that's our time clock application that we use. So what you can do is you can assign these to different sheets, and then you can actually even print these off. So if we have a look at preview this sheet, and it will generate a code, and you can see here. So this allows you to use a barcoding system. So when you use the time clock, which we'll go on to later, you can just scan that and it will automatically put in the details for you. So that's non-productive. These are very important, again, like I say, to allocate that time when an employee is not physically working on an actual job. That's billable. So now if we go across to the next tab, we've got our labor rates. So obviously this is your default costing. So you can set these up here. Then when you add an employee, you can change them for each individual employee. However, this is your default, and this would kind of be applied to everyone. So what your hourly cost rate is and what your overhead rates are. Again, the overhead recovery defaults, put in the ledger code and the analysis codes. And then also here you've got your charge out rates as well. What the default charge that appear on your jobs when time is booked, and what will be calculated when you come to the invoice. If we go over to the next tab as well, this is your overtime rate. So if you do have any overtime, you can set that up here, and then what the multiplier is. So obviously if it's just time or time and a half or double time. Also whether it's a night shift, that kind of stuff. It just sort of helps with the system to automatically work this out if you wish to, if you're using our time clock feature. And then if we look at the last tab, training courses. So any training courses that you offer or your engineers or your personnel needs, you enter these. This is where the header of that particular training course is, like human factors. If your engineers require human factors, you set it up here. Then in their employee details, which we'll go into, you can set when they've actually completed that and when it goes out of date, and then the system will automatically track that for you as well. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the personnel setup, and is the starting point for before you sort of get entering your employee details. So we've come out of that now, and then what we'll do is move on to the next one down from personnel setup to work profiles. So we click on work profiles. This is setting up basically all your shift patterns, the working days, all that kind of information that you can then apply to an employee, so that the system will track the hours they should be working on within a day, and where those hours are allocated to, whether they're jobs or those non-productive tasks as well. And it sort of shows if there's any overbookings or underbookings as well in the timesheet section, which we'll go into later. So to start off is the days. So this is where you basically set up all your standard days or any of your particular shift patterns. So a standard working day, if we take that for example, you're working from 8:30 till 5, and there's a lunch break between 12 and 1. So that calculates there your total for the working day is 7.5 hours plus a 1 hour break there. You can also see at the bottom where this particular day calculation is used as well. We've also got, so we know some companies have a shorter day on a Friday. So we particularly do as well at Tracware. And so what you have to do is set up that Friday as being different. And so those are your hours for the Friday as well. So we can see 8 till 12, and it's 4 hours. Again, you can see where that particular day is used within the week section that we'll look at next. Also, you can set up your automatic breaks as well on the right hand side here. So any tea breaks, and again, so that will calculate out automatically when allocating the time onto the jobs. So first you need to set up all your different days that you have. One thing to note is, say you've got a night shift, so which will potentially go over the 12-hour clock, so past midnight. There's an interesting calculation here that you need to sort of enter it as the next days, but continuing the adding on the time. So particularly here, so this says this is 8 p.m. To 8 a.m. So what you do is obviously 8 till 12 is 4 hours, and then you've got the extra 4 hours afterwards to get you to 24-hour clock plus 4 gives you 28. So it's just to bear that in mind, so that the system will automatically work that out for you, and it knows it's a night shift. So you need to tick this night shift box here, so the system will correctly work out those hours for you and apply them to the correct timesheets as well. So that's just something to bear in mind. So once you've got all your days set up, you then need to look at how the week looks. So particularly here, we've got, if we just take a standard working week here, 34 hours in total. So at the top, you set what the description is. So here we've got the standard working week, and then for each day, what day is applicable from the previous tab. So for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we have the standard working day, so the 8:30 till 5. Okay. Then we also set up that special one for Friday because it's a shorter day. So we set that up and apply that. So you just need to click on the drop down and you can just select it, and that'll put it in there for you. We can save that. And then also for Saturday, Sunday, you do need a specific those to be set up as well. So if we go back to the days tab, and we can see the weekend here, and it's, there's no hours, so 0 being applied to that. And then when we apply that to the week, we just add those, and again, there's no hours added, and then you get your full total weeks. I'll just return that back to the Friday, back to the correct time. So yeah, 34 hours there. So that sets up your week. So you can have any number of different weeks and how you set those up. You got your shifts, different shift types, that kind of stuff, your night shifts, and how that looks for an individual over a week. Then once you've got your week set up, you've got your working patterns. So this is where you can then start applying if there's different week patterns. So 5 on, 3 off, 5 on, 4 off, those kind of combinations, you can then apply those to your weeks, and then when they kind of start up again. So we've got just the standard tour pattern here, and you can see there's a number of different weeks. So weeks on, weeks off. Okay, and then you can also see who they've been applied to at the bottom. Standard working pattern is just a standard working week. It's 34 hours. So yeah, so the system can accommodate some quite complex shift patterns, which especially within the aviation industry and the engineers, how they work, especially at night shifts and weekend work and all that kind of stuff, can easily be accommodated if you get them all set up properly at the start. If we go over to the next tab, we've got what's called the DCS, Data Collection System Overtime Rules. So this is our time clock, and it can automatically add the overtime based on your parameters. So if they've got to work a minimum amount of time to start before it becomes overtime, and also if there's any maximum time as well. Obviously, you first need to enable it for this first option if you want it to do it. And then also any of the other options that are applicable to the way you sort of operate as well. So that's just to allow for any automations with the overtime rules based on the overtime calculations from the previous admin screen that we were on for a personnel setup. Okay. What we then need to do, if we go to the next tab, is set up any public holidays for the year. So here we've added for 2024, we've got Christmas Day, and it's just as simple as adding a holiday. Click on Add, put in the details, and then the system will know whether that if it's a public holiday and things like that, it will know that individuals shouldn't be booking on those days, and that if it will automatically calculate overtime if they do clock on, or it might not even let them. Okay. If we just look at the previous one of the previous years, we can see we've added all the holidays and what the type on, if it's a public holiday, or whether it's standard days, things like that, if people are expected to work on some bank holidays. And then the final tab is actually the holiday period. So this comes into use especially if you have our time and attendance module, which allows you to track employee holidays. So when does your actual holiday period start and finish? A lot of organisation is the 1st of Jan to 31st of December, but I do know some organisations keep them to the 1st of April to the 31st of March. And this allows the system to calculate what holidays employees are entitled to and what they have left after they've been allocated. So that's just set in here as well, and you can just add your year, and that will then allow you to calculate those holidays in the system. Right. Now, once we've set all that up in the administrative setup, if we come down to this contact and personnel, and then we can start looking at employee details. We click on employee details, and this should load. So for this particular demo, I've been using this employee ID 12345. And your first tab, you can see here, you can add as much information as your company requires for that individual: addresses, contact details, any license or passport information, if that's what you're wanting to track in here as well. What you can also do is you can print the barcode. So again, as I'll show you in a bit about our time clock, you can print barcodes for the employees, so it allows a quick entry into the time clock system of just scanning a barcode for that employee ID when booking time. If we just move along the tabs, we've got next of kin. So if you want to keep the next of kin details for that employee in the system, you can add those here. Company details, so obviously what their position is, what departments, their cost rates, all that kind of stuff. So when you set the new employee, it'll ask you if you want to use the default cost rate for the department, but like say you can have the department cost rate, and then you've also got the employee cost rate as well, so you can set those independently. When an employee leaves, you can set that as well, just check the box, and then also the leave date. Reports to, so this allows you to link to any lead hands. So if you've got a lead hand, this individual may report to someone else. This works for when you come to authorizing any timesheets, so the managers can authorize those that are linked to them. And also if you are using our time and attendance module, any holidays, if they can be carried forward. So if it goes over that period, does it carry those through to the next period? If we now go on to the next tab, system details. So this is linking to a user account. So if we edit this employee, and here is a link to user. So your user is the details you use to actually log into Aerotrac. So you potentially may have employees who don't use Aerotrac or not on it, but you still need to track things like their absences, their holidays, that kind of stuff, or you manually are tracking their timesheets, but they don't physically log into the system, so they may not have a user account into the system. However, if they do, you can then link them to that user account just by clicking on the drop down and then selecting the correct user account from there. You can then also apply them to which particular work group they're assigned to. If they're going to be using our time clock application, then we need to make sure that this box is ticked here for direct entry, and then where they can use the barcode scanning system to clock onto jobs directly. Also, are they a contractor and are they an auditor as well? You can set those in here, and the auditor one allows for additional functionality within the quality modules as well. Are they on daily timesheets as well? So we'll look at timesheets later on, what their work pattern is as well. So you just select which, if they're on, the standard working pattern, and what the week is for when they're starting as well. If they've got any licenses, if they're MRO, manufacturing, camo licenses, you can check those boxes here and add what their stamp numbers are. This then allows for any authorization and approvals within the MRO system as well. So we'll just cancel those changes there, those system details. Training records, again, so when we were talking about those training courses, you can add those here. So we can edit, we can add what the course is. If you want to add those here, you can add those. We add a new course, sorry. And then we had human factors before, the certificate date, when it's due, or if it doesn't expire. Some courses don't. And then the system will then track that for you. We'll just cancel that. Again, we talked about holidays. So if we've set up the holiday periods and the holidays and types, you can enter those here. So on the right hand side, you sort of set up the basic initial details. So what they're entitled to, if they've had any carried forwards, total that have been booked on and booked off. And again, at the top, you've got the holiday period. So again, that needs to be set up first before you can sort of add these holidays. And then you can just literally manually add when someone requests on holiday, who added it, who approved it, when it was confirmed, and anything like that. And this will then track what holidays they've had and what they've booked as well. There's also an option to track the time in lieu as well. So obviously, if anyone works additional time and they want to take that holiday or take that in lieu, then that can all be tracked as well within the system. Yeah, but again, these holiday and time and attendance that you do require our time and attendance module to be able to access those. Any absences, so you can record those details exactly the same as the holiday and the time in lieu, and that will show up here for you. And then the final one, we've got the time clock. So these are the time clock entries. If you need to add any manually, or if any of them need to be amended because of if there's been an issue with the system or they've overrun or forgot to clock off a specific job, those can all be edited in here as well. So there's a lot of information you can have on your employees to track a lot of the day-to-day for employees. Again, like I say, if your employees don't necessarily have to be users of Aerotrac, so you can still track all your employee holidays. They don't need to use Aerotrac, but if they do, then you just need to make sure you sign them up or link them on the system details tab here. Okay, so that's pretty much all the setup in the administrator module. So what we'll do is we'll now refer back to the main application, Aerotrac. And what I have done is set up a project which will allow us to have a look and see where some of these labour details are being recorded as well. So we go into the work scope details and we can go across to the labour tab, and we can see here there's some time being booked on this particular operation here, and this was being used. So we can see they've booked 1.5 hours. So we can see that for this particular operation, there's 4 hours 24 minutes that have been underbooked because it's estimated that will take 8 hours and we've only booked 1.5 hours. So this will show up on here. Now, one thing to note, this box will only show from the previous day's entries, because the system doesn't know the full time until the day has completed, and just because anyone could be working up till midnight on a particular job or operation, potentially, especially if they're on night shift, then that will only show up here once the day has completed. And so when the next day, when you come into the system and have a look, the previous day's works will all be listed and the bookings on there. So we can see here, this was from the 4th of March, so that was Monday. We've got another entry here as well. So we've got 2 separate entries here, or 2 different days, one from the 5th, one from the 6th as well. So 6 hours on the first entry, 5.5 hours on the last entry. But you can see here again what the totals are as well. So the other way to sort of add these bookings as well is if you go back into the Aerotrac system and you go under personnel, and you've also got the daily timesheets. So this is if you don't have the time clock system where you can manually add timesheets for individuals. So you can select the date. It won't let you do anything for anything in advance because the day's not been done. So if we pick to today, it's actually, if we look at yesterday, we can see what those bookings were. So I mentioned earlier of the non-productive tab for the forcing off shift if someone forgets to clock off. So the system has automatically clocked them off here, and you can see that that's clocked them off there. But what you can also see is that this individual hasn't booked all his hours. So his planned hours is 7.5 hours, but he's only actually done 5.5. So there's a deficiency there. So what we can do, if we know what that was, or if we want to add an additional non-productive, we can just click on add, and we can say it's a non-productive task, and they were doing some training on site. What you can see here is that the system has automatically entered what that deficiency is to get them to their full allocations. And then all we need to do is click on save, and there we've got that added. And now we can see that for that day, that individual has all his hours allocated. So there's nothing deficient there. So nothing's overbooked, nothing's deficient or anything like that. What then is good practice is that a supervisor or manager who is looking after this particular individual can authorize the timesheet. So the next day they probably review the previous day's work, go through the individuals and see what they've actually been allocated to, check that all the hours add up correctly and that all the time is utilized, and then using the authorized timesheet button to say, yes, I'm happy with that. That will then be able to pass through into the project. So we've just authorized that. If we now go back to the project details and we can refresh that, and then we can see here we've got at the bottom here that they've been booked on. Okay. You've also got these ledger code. You can see on the left-hand side for project details. If we look at the status, we can see what hours are underbooked, if they're overbooked or unposted. So obviously this is showing yellow, which means that they've booked on and they're in the system. However, we've not actually posted these hours. So we're still waiting for them to be confirmed. Back on the timesheet, when we're happy with that, we can just click post timesheet. Only authorized timesheet work will be posted. Confirm yes. So because we've authorized it and that's been posted, so that will now go back into the system as well. Okay. So again, if we go and refresh and see what that looks like, and we can see here that timesheet has been posted and it shows up here. Okay. So again, this can be done manually. So if engineers are handwriting these down, and then an administrator can come in and add them manually, and then this will then all pass through to the jobs and the projects and give you what the actual hours are. However, the best way to sort of track your time and things is to use the time clock application, which we have So it looks very basic. So here it is just up on the left hand side of the screen. What you can do, if we just, I'll just clear all this. So employee ID, so you know what your employee ID is, or if you've got the barcode, you could just scan it. So the employee ID we're going with today is 12345, enter, and here it brings up the name of that employee. Now, one thing I have done to sort of try and demonstrate the barcoding is when you print a project or on the route, you can have it so it prints the barcodes out. So what we're going to do is attempt to try and book onto the final inspection tab. So if you've got a barcode scanner, which I've got here, and then if we try and scan that barcode at the bottom once it initializes, just put in the, we just try that again. I think it's because it's on my screen, it's not picking up properly. There we go. So by just scanning, we've seen there that we've booked on straight onto that job. So that's the quickest and easiest way for employees to book onto a job. They literally can just scan their ID, scan the job, hit enter, and they're basically now time is being booked to that job. On this as well, you can also do what's called batch booking. So if you've got a particular operation, sort of like painting, if you're going to be painting multiple parts at the same time, you can batch book your time across all those particular individual jobs. What the system will do then will just take that total time and then split it evenly across all those jobs. So if you've got 5 jobs that are going in for paint, but you're going to do them all at once and it takes you an hour, that hour's time booked to those 5 jobs will be split evenly across them and allocated to them individually. So now we've actually booked onto that, we can, if we go back into the main application, we go back to our work scope details and refresh. We can see here that this final inspection tab is now updated. So here you can see the total live time. So we've currently been booked on that for 1 minute. So someone has booked on for 1 minute on that job. And there's 7 hours 59 left of the 8 hours allocated. Okay. What you will notice is the bottom hasn't populated because that will only populate on after the day has completed, once all the hours have been finalized and the day has finished, so that the system knows that no more hours for that particular day can be booked, and then those will be populated. So tomorrow, if we came into the system and had a look, we would see that that entry would be entered there of however many hours we are on there. What we can also do is, if we go back into the time clock, we could also potentially book off that job. So we can go back into our employee detail, ID number, and then we want to look up, and this will give you the options then to select a non-productive task, and then we can book off shift as well. And if we just double click on that, and we can hit enter, and then that's gone through. Okay. So now if we go back and we can have a look and refresh. Okay, so 2 minutes have been booked, and so that time has now been allocated. If we now go to today's timesheet for that individual, again, it probably won't come through until the day has finished because the system is still sort of aggregating all that information. And then once the system has finished for the day, all those date times will come through ready for authorization the following day. Again, just to reiterate, the time clock application is a separate module, and also the time and attendance is a separate module as well. So if you want to look at things like your barcoding for the projects, collecting, for both productive and non-productive times, updating the WIP schedule, and batch booking for multiple projects, you will need time clock for that. And the time and attendance allows you to sort of check when your employees are on or off shift bookings. employee rostering, things like that, absence and holiday recording. And also it integrates with our new AWI Planning Manager module. That's, if you're looking at going for that, you will need the time and attendance module. I think that covers the majority of stuff for our personnel, to get people up in your organization up and ready to be allocated to jobs, and allows them to track their time and bookings. We'll look at sort of the MRO modules. We'll look at more details of how those labor hours are tracked as well, and things like that. But this is purely how to set up your personnel ready so that you can start tracking their time for jobs, so you can then accurately bill for billable hours and everything like that. Is there any questions from anyone, or any points from anyone?
Yeah, Pat? No questions on the chat.
No, Pat, have you got anything I've missed? Any recommendations? One thing, actually, there is one thing we could have a look at. If we look at the reports, there are a lot of reports that you can run. So, you know, your employee list, your work profiles, timesheets can all be reported on. The summary of hours booked for a particular project, to allow you to sort of see, are you accurately estimating your jobs and things like that? Are they taking longer or shorter than what you're expecting? Just allows you to do sort of business analysis and check that you're actually being as efficient as possible and things like that. There's also some particular options. So if we go to administrator module, administrative setup, company setup, as you might have seen previously, and there's system options. There are some personnel options here. So always force off shift at the end. You know, that's an option. So it will always force someone off at the end of the day after their day shift is finished, so they don't overbook on time. Book to completed ops. So basically this will stop anyone. So if an operation is completed, the time clock won't allow them to book onto that operation, because it's saying it's completed, so no more time should be allocated to that as well. Your default allocations for holidays, all that kind of stuff. So there are a number of options in here that might be useful for your organization. Timesheet authorization is one that's used, so it must be authorized before it can be posted. So this is to ensure that the line manager or the supervisor has authorized and said, yes, those are the hours that were booked, and then so your finance department can then post those once they've been authorized. Anything additional from you, Pat? Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. Probably just a couple of comments. I mean, the idea from a general perspective is that the system's designed to be as flexible or as prescriptive as you want it to be. As Warwick pointed out, you've got to tick people as direct in order for them to be able to actually book time to jobs. But you can use it purely to clock people in and clock people out. So if you need to know who's in the building, then essentially all employees could be on there. And as Warwick said as well, you don't have to be an Aerotrac user, and it doesn't take up a software license in order for somebody to be set up as an employee and for them to book time. Kind of the purpose of the posting more than anything else is actually to do with finances. So once a timesheet has been authorized, it can be unauthorized if you want to change it. But generally speaking, what posting does, apart from locking the timesheet down so you can't make any other changes to it, is it actually pushes the costs through to work in progress at that point. So that's the only real significance in relation to posting. And as Warwick said, you've got the ability for people to sort of clock onto a job, and you can see that someone is clocked onto the job, but you can't actually see who from the actual project screen on the Labour tab. But if you go to the reports, there's a current DCS bookings report, which actually shows you who's logged on to what at this current point in time. So there is a way of seeing that. There's also a facility within the employee details, which you've only added very recently, where if somebody comes up to you and they tell you, oh, I've just booked to the wrong code, or I booked to I forgot to clock in, there is actually a facility in the employees detail screen where you can actually change the times. So you can manually change them on the fly if they're aware of the fact that they've made a mistake. Anything after that, you can correct in the timesheets the next day. Yeah, I mean, that's it from me, Warwick.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pat. Thank you for your those extra points. Yeah. So, like I say, you know, very flexible. There's a lot of information, and yeah, it's something that we think is good. Especially the time clock is very good for quick and simply adding people to jobs, so they can quickly start allocating their time efficiently to the jobs. So, something we would definitely recommend. But especially for workshops and hangars as well. So yeah, if there is no other questions or anything,
no, nothing on the chat, mate.
Nothing on the chat. Perfect. Okay. Thank you for attending. Again, if you do have any questions or anything like that, feel free to email us or use the support log as the quickest and best way to do that. And if possible, it would be great if you could leave some feedback on this particular session. Was it useful for you? Is there any more information you'd like? Anything that could be improved on? All feedback is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much and have a good day.